Good morning. Good morning. Hey, everybody. It's Debbie. Welcome back to my channel. Today, we are starting closing arguments in the Phil Spector trial. Yay, we finally made it. We are here. And we are going to get right to it so we can at least get through the first part of Alan Jackson's closing argument. It's 4 parts, I think. So we're looking at about 4 hours. He told the judge it would be 2, but we're looking at like 4 hours. And I also wanted to correct something. They were in jury instructions talking about one of the medications that Lana was on was acyclovir. I said it was an antifungal. It's not. It's a antiviral. And what they wanted to keep out was the condition that she was on it for was herpes. And herpes is a virus, so it's an antiviral, not an antifungal. I just wanted to correct that. Okay, so Judy says, a juror from trial 1 attended the closings in trial 2. He stated, I just wanted to be here to support Clarkson's family, adding, I feel like I know her. Wow. That's cool. That at least they made that kind of an impact, because yeah, that's sad. Okay. If you hear the dogs barking, I'm eating breakfast. That's why they want some of my eggs. Sorry about that. So, and I'm so sorry, guys. I was running late this morning, and I 100%, I thought I was done before I got up to make breakfast, and I forgot to pull up the Court TV website. So let me do that real quick. And today we get to scroll all the way down to the bottom, finally. Come on, StreamYard. Any day now.
Board of Court is now in session. The Honorable Larry Paul Fiddler, Judge presiding.
All right, the defendant is present with his counsel. The district attorneys are present. The jurors and alternates are present. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to that part of the trial where counsel now has an opportunity to present to you their closing arguments. Because the people have the burden of proof, they will open first. The defense will have a chance to respond to that argument, and the people get the final argument. It is that way. And with counsel, we're not setting any time limits on them. However, it is expected that argument will take about 2 days, so that you know what to expect. Mr. Jackson will give the people's opening today. Whenever he finishes, Ms. Kenny Bodden will begin for the defense and then finish whenever she's done, and then Mr. Dixon will close for the people. The belief is that we will probably finish sometime tomorrow at the end of the day. If for any reason we don't, we will go over into Friday to finish argument, and then you will be instructed and begin your deliberations on Friday. You will be working, as I have told you before, on Fridays from this point forward. The instructions themselves are for a case that has taken this long to try, will not take that long to read. When we come to the instruction phase of the case, you'll have your own packet of instructions to follow along with me as I read them to you, and then to keep in the jury room with you. This should help your deliberations. It's something that sort of has started in the last few years with judges giving jurors individual packets. Usually you have one package to take in the jury room. I'm going to try something different and see how this helps you and whether it works to your advantage. I'll ask you at the close of the case how it helped or didn't help you, as the case may be. I can't see any disadvantage to it, so certainly that will happen. So we're looking at getting the case to you probably on Friday. You'll be able to begin your deliberations on Friday. Some things I do want to remind you of. This has been a long trial, and even though we have daily transcripts, we're well past 60 volumes. It is not unusual during closing argument that the attorneys may innocently misstate some of the evidence as you recall it. It would serve no purpose for any attorney to deliberately try to mislead you, since ultimately you will have the record to rely on. But it does happen, and just keep that in mind. And I've told counsel how to deal with that, and hopefully we'll have a fairly seamless argument. Ultimately, if there are questions as to what the evidence is, first you have your recollection, you have your notes, and of course you have the transcripts. You don't have them in the jury room, but if you have some dispute over the evidence, as you will be instructed, then certainly the reporter will be available to read the testimony to you as appropriate. Perhaps the most important thing that you need to keep in mind is that this is not evidence, what you're about to hear. It is argument, and there is a difference. The evidence was the sworn testimony that you heard on the witness stand, any physical exhibits that have been received into evidence, and the jury view, of course, that you had. Those facts, those things are evident. It's an attempt for the attorneys to persuade you, to tell you what they believe the evidence show, and what the instructions will show you, how it ties into the evidence and how you should consider your deliberations. But it is not evidence. You have already received all the evidence in this case. It's argument. That's what it is. It's argument. It's persuasion. So please keep that in mind. I will also tell you that during the arguments, the attorneys may refer to jury instructions. We are finalizing some final wording. Will be different when I finally give it to you. Nobody's trying to fool you, but it's my final summation of the instructions to you that governs. It's what I tell you the law is, that the law is. It's that simple. So if there's ever a dispute, and I doubt there would be, it's what I tell you that controls. So with that in mind, I believe we are ready to proceed. Mr. Jackson, are you ready?
I am.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good morning. It's been a long time since I've talked to you the first time. As a matter of fact, it's been about 5 months since the first time you guys ever laid eyes on us. When you walked into this courtroom some 5 months ago to pick up those jury questionnaires, everybody remember that? You didn't know any of us. But things have changed. When you walked into this courtroom for the first time 5 months ago, you didn't know me. You didn't know Mr. Dixon. You didn't know the defense team or the judge. Matter of fact, you didn't even know each other. But things have changed. When you walked into this courtroom 5 months ago, you didn't know the facts of this case. You might have thought you knew some things. You hadn't heard the testimony. You hadn't seen the witnesses or met the witnesses. You hadn't seen the evidence. And most importantly, you didn't know who the real Phil Spector is. You didn't know who he is or what he is, and most importantly, you didn't know what he does. But like I said, indeed, things have changed. So with that in mind, now that you know who Mr. Spector is, now that you know what he is, now that you know what he does, now that you know a little bit about his violent history with women and with guns, I want to take you back with me. Let's move out of the courtroom. Mentally, let's move out of this courtroom under these bright lights and those seats you're sitting in, and let's move to a more relevant location. Let's move out to the parking lot. The parking lot adjacent to the House of Blues, the one you've seen so many photographs of. Parking lot. It's February 3rd, 2003. It's late at night. Actually, it's early in the morning. It's dark out. The lot's beginning to empty. Go with me to that location. Mentally take yourselves with me to that location. The lot's not full. The valets are starting to clean up for the night. And you see over toward the side a big, shiny black Mercedes. And as you look to your left, standing in that parking lot, you see Philip Spector emerge from the House of Blues. He's wearing all black for a big white jacket. It's oversized, a little too big for him. Too big on the shoulders, too long, sleeves too baggy. And he steps out of the House of Blues accompanied by a tall, beautiful blonde with blonde ringlets. She's taller than he is. She's wearing an above-the-knee slip dress, a black jacket, and she has a leopard skin purse. Where you are, parking lot, you begin to hear them talk, and you can overhear their conversation. You can hear as Phil Spector begins to insist that Lana Clarkson come back to his castle. He tries to coax her back to the location. And you listen as she constantly says, "Thank you. No, I can't go. I've got to work tomorrow. No, thank you. But I can't join you, Mr. Spector." And you listen as he continues to try to lure her back to his castle, back to the Alhambra castle. "Come back to my castle and see my castle." And then just then, you think you hear in her voice a little crack. She may begin to relent. She may actually accept his offer. You're standing in that parking lot, and you're watching this conversation. Let me ask you a question. If you could say but one thing to Lana Clarkson right then, standing at the back of that Mercedes in that parking lot, one phrase, even two little words, even if you had to whisper it, in this courtroom, you couldn't answer it. You'd shrug. And you'd say, "I don't know what I'd say to her." But now that you know the real Phil Spector, now that you know who he is and what he is and what he does, what would you say? Even if you had to whisper it so he couldn't hear. All of you, all 17 of you are thinking the same thing. You'd lean over and you'd whisper, "Don't go. Don't go." You'd simply say, "Lana, don't go." And the reason everyone in this jury box thought the same thing. Maybe the words a little bit different, but the thought was the same. The reason that you would say that is because you know something she didn't know. You know the real Phil Spector. And if you thought to yourself, I'd tell her not to go, it's because you know in your heart of hearts, after hearing all of this evidence, you know in your heart of hearts, he's responsible for her death. He killed her. Let's take a deep breath and give you some guideposts. Y'all have spent enough time with me now that you know that I'm tickled by guideposts. I like for folks to know where I'm going. I like folks to know where I'm headed, because it's easier as we move through this evidence. And I'm going to be covering a little bit of ground with you. I'll be honest with you. It's not going to take me 15 minutes and I'm going to sit down. It's going to be a little bit longer than that. How long, I don't know. But I'm going to walk with you through the evidence. And one of the pet peeves I have is I don't like to stand up and talk at someone or talk to someone. I want to discuss this evidence and I want to discuss the law with you. And I want to do it together. So I want to let you know where we're going a little bit during the course of our conversation. And that is, first, we're going to talk a little bit about the law. That's something that we haven't discussed since the voir dire process. But you remember we talked a little bit about the law. I asked each of you certain questions about whether you could follow certain concepts in the law. Now we've gotten to the point where the judge is actually going to instruct you on the law that applies to this case. So we're talking about I'm going to move into this discussion a little bit and remind you folks of the events of 2003. We're going to talk a little bit about the defense and what the defense attempted to show, what they attempted to present. And we're going to talk about how they failed in their attempts to present what they promised you in opening statement. We're going to talk a little bit about the true Lana Clarkson and who she really is. And we're going to talk a little bit about the true Phil Spector and who he really is and what he really is. And then we're going to summarize what happened inside the foyer that night, that early morning hour at 5 o'clock. We're going to talk about what Philip Spector did, what he didn't do, and what he said he did. So that's sort of the guideposts, and that gives you a general idea of where we're going to go with our discussion. And as I said, the first thing we need to talk about is the law, and kind of get that out of the way. Why talk about the law now? It's not the sexiest thing in the world, but we have to start on the same page. We have to start on the same playing field, if you will. And one nice thing about this case, if there's any nice thing about this case, it's that the law is crystal clear. It's not convoluted. It's not inexplicable. It's not difficult to conceive of or to conceptualize. He is charged with one count. He's charged with the unlawful killing of a person with conscious disregard for human life. You're going to hear me say that 3, 4, or 5, maybe a half a dozen times, maybe a dozen times. Incredibly, as we begin our discussion, that we're on the same page with regard to the law. So first I'm going to take the horse, and then I'm going to kill it, and then I'm going to beat it. Because I want everyone to be with me on the law. It's relatively simple, and lawyers, when we write these things, can figure out how to screw up the simplest concept and make it difficult. Let me say it again. I'll put it up, and you'll see as I walk through, one of the things that I like to have for you to have is you're literally going to have Philip Spector is charged with the unlawful killing of a person with conscious disregard for human life. You've probably thought of charges like murder and manslaughter and second-degree murder and first-degree murder and intentional murder and voluntary and involuntary manslaughter. Those are terms that are attached to the underlying law. Well, And in different jurisdictions, in this jurisdiction in California, the unlawful killing of a person with conscious disregard for human life happens to be called second murder in jurisdiction. It might be called different things in different places, but here it's second-degree murder. Now, just some words. Unlawful killing of Lana Clarkson with conscious disregard for her life. Okay, what does that mean? Here's how the jury instruction is actually going to sound when Judge Fiddler gives it to you. He's going to tell you that in order to prove this crime that we have to degree murder, we have to prove that the defendant committed an act that caused the death of Lana Clarkson, any act that caused the death of Lana Clarkson, and he did it with malice aforethought. So, of course, everybody knows what malice aforethought is, right? Wrong. That begs the next question, because lawyers are involved in this, and they can convolute anything. What is malice aforethought? Let's talk about it, and we'll break that down. Remember the two elements. Keep them in your mind, though. An act that caused the death and malice aforethought. There are two types of thought here in California. Two types. One is express malice. The other is implied malice. Express malice simply means intent to kill. That's what it means, an intent to kill. If you can prove intent to kill, that's malice. And that's a classic example. Let's say the other guy is down on the ground and now he's got a split lip and a broken nose, stands up and he says to the other guy that he was fighting, you know what, I've got a gun in my car. I'm going to go outside that gun. I'm going to take you off. I'm going to kill you. You're going to wish you hadn't broken this beautiful nose of mine. So he walks out to his car. He grabs his weapon, walks back into the bar, points the weapon at the guy's head and shoots him. An intent to kill? Absolutely. Absolutely. But that is not what is required under the law to prove implied malice or to prove malice aforethought, because there's a second way to get there, and that's the implied malice, and that's what's appropriate in this case. That's what applies in this case, not the intent to kill. It's implied malice, which is conscious disregard for human life. And here's what you're going to hear me say over and over and over. We do not have to prove an intent to kill. Okay? We have to prove that he committed an act, Lana Clarkson, and there was implied malice. So let's get to the definition of implied malice. This sounds more complicated than it actually is. Look at how the law breaks it down. The defendant committed an intentional act that was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous, and he did it anyway. The way it reads is an intentional act, the natural consequences of which were dangerous to human life. At the time he committed the act, the defendant knew that it was dangerous, and the defendant deliberately did the act with conscious disregard for human life. Now let me break it down one more time. An act that's dangerous, that you know is dangerous. Okay? You can put those three together and just say, you know you did a dangerous act. The fourth thing is you ignore the danger and you do it anyway. Everybody with me? You commit an act that you know is dangerous and you do it anyway. And if that costs someone their life, here in California, that's defined as second-degree murder. Plain and simple. If that act costs someone their life for any reason, it's second-degree murder. It is dangerous. And you do it anyway, and it causes death. That's second-degree murder. So it literally breaks down like this. Pretty simple. I mean, there's lots and lots and lots of words that you'll hear from the judge. This is how it breaks down. If you commit an act that you know is dangerous to human life, and you do it anyway, that's the conscious disregard for human life. It's second-degree murder. There were some stories, horrible stories. I mean, I can't conceive that people would do this, but there were actually stories about guys that were taking boulders and bowling balls and things like that and tossing them up over freeway overpasses. People have read about those stories. You're nodding your head. You've obviously heard about this thing. what kind of person would do this? But that's for another case. That's for another discussion. That said, here's what the law says about, and this is a good example. Go back and think about the three things that I just said. If you commit an act that you know is dangerous to human life and you do it anyway, second-degree murder, right? Now think about it. Tossing bowling balls off an overpass. Family of four is driving along on the 5. Drives under an overpass, mom, dad in the front seat, little Bobby and little Susie in the back seat, and all of a sudden a bowling ball slams through the front windshield. The car flips 15 times, killing a family of 4. Then the defendant walks into court and says, hey, wait a minute, wait a minute. I can't be guilty of second-degree murder. I can't be guilty of anything. But I didn't know the bowling ball hit a car. I've actually thrown bowling balls off the overpass and it didn't. You don't get a free pass. When you engage in conduct that's so inherently dangerous, and you know it's dangerous, it costs someone life. That's second-degree murder. I mean, ask yourself, should the guy tossing the bowling for the overpass get a free pass? Just get away with that? Absolutely not. You would all agree. Another example. Pointing a loaded gun at the face of another human being. Pointing a loaded gun at another human being. Ask yourself a couple of questions. Is that dangerous? I should see everybody nodding their head, mentally nodding their head. You're damn right it's dangerous. We have professionals in this courtroom sitting behind that glass right there who carries a gun every day of her life. She's a professional. She's trained. You've never seen her gun. You will never see her gun. She would pull that gun for one reason and one reason only. If she believes deadly force. Not, I think I might hurt you force. Not, you might get shot in the toe force. Police officers and professionals pull their gun if they believe it may be necessary to inflict deadly force, because guns are deadly. It's common sense. Every 10-year-old knows. As a matter of fact, I was at dinner with a good friend of mine, Rick Ocampo. As a matter of fact, family. Kathleen and his little 10-year-old girl, Megan. Adorable little girl, doesn't stand that tall. If you ask Megan, that little 10-year-old, if you see a gun, what do? She'll tell you, like a little 10-year-old little robot, she'll tell you two things over and over and over. You don't touch it, and you call an adult. You don't touch it, and you call an adult. Why? Why do we teach our children that? Because guns kill people. That's what they're designed to do. This gun.
My dad, he would come home for lunch. He would lay his gun belt across the bed, across my parents' king-size bed. And I was taught from a very, very early age never to, I was like this little girl. You don't touch the gun. You never, ever touched the gun. And to this day, I have never touched a gun. And there's always been guns in my house. I remember once as a teenager, I was laying on the floor watching TV, and I happened to look underneath my dad's recliner. There was a gun under there, and I went, oh, wow. He has a gun hidden under his recliner. And it was like normal. Like, I didn't touch it. I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. I was like, oh, wow, there's a gun under there.
Called hollow point ammunition, designed to flatten, get larger, and twist and tear like a claw. As it passes through flesh. Guns are dangerous. They're inherently dangerous. You saw a gun expert, Jim Carroll, on the stand. He said all the guns, their cylinders open away from the frame, and there were big plastics that was threaded through the cylinder. The gun is physically impossible to fire. It can't hurt you unless you throw it at someone in that configuration. All right? It is physically impossible to fire. Did you handle the guns? Kid gloves. pointed at you. Had he pointed it at the judge, I don't care if it has a strap through it or not, we'd still be sending ham sandwiches to the back because he'd still be in custody. You don't point guns.
Do you guys remember, did any of you watch the Hannah Gutierrez trial where the guy actually did point the gun in the direction of the judge? That was hilarious. She freaked out.
Guns at anything you're not willing to destroy. Rule number 1. Pointing a loaded firearm at a human being. Is it dangerous? Absolutely. If you do it on purpose, knowing that it's dangerous, and every 10-year-old knows that it's dangerous, that's second-degree murder. No matter how it goes off. Now, I'm changing gears here. This is my gear shift and this is my guy host. Now I'm going to talk a bit about or lack thereof. The reason it's called implied malice because we don't have to have an expression of an intent to kill. It's called implied malice because the expression can be implied by the conduct. All right? If a person knowingly points a firearm at another human being and that goes off for reason, for any reason, that is second-degree murder. What I want to stress is the defendant is charged with 1 count. And that's it. You're looking at it. We've just talked about it. He's charged with 1 count and 1 count only. If the gun was in his hand and he was pointing that gun at Lana Clarkson, I don't care how that gun went off. The crime is what? Second-degree murder. Second-degree murder. And a juror stands up and says, well, you know what? I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt. I know he was pointing a gun at her. I mean, the evidence is obvious. It's clear. He pulled the gun out and he was pointing the gun out and he's threatening her. But you know what? What if the gun went off accidentally? Juror number 3, you would stand up and you'd say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how the gun went off. It doesn't matter. That's how you'd correct. It's incumbent upon you all to. Law says it doesn't matter. If another juror stands up and says, you know what, I know he pointed the gun at her, he was threatening her with, but what if she slapped his hand? Juror number 12, you'd say, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how much she slaps him. The juror stands up and says, well, what if it was, what if you've heard that his hand, what if he had a trimmer and the gun just went off? Juror number 2, you'd say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter how the gun went off. There could have been a strong wind blowing through the door and the gun goes off. It doesn't matter. There could have been an earthquake and the gun goes off. It doesn't matter. He pointed the loaded gun at her face. That is an inherently dangerous act. If the gun goes off in that circumstance for any reason, the crime is second-degree murder.
Hey, Carla.
The crime is second-degree murder.
Oh, wow, I could have done Jackson's closing for him. Didn't I just say that like yesterday or the day before? I'm learning law, y'all. Look.
That's why I want to make sure that that horse that I've just beaten to death is in all of your minds. It's very clear. I don't want there to be a mistake. I don't want, once you guys go back into the deliberation room, once y'all folks, you folks go back there and start discussing this, I don't want there to be any misinterpretation of the law. Discuss the facts all you want to, talk about the facts, mull the facts over, but the law is clear. If you decide that Philip Spector was pointing that loaded weapon at Lana Clarkson, and keep in mind where it was pointed, it ended up in her mouth. How it got there could have been a couple of different ways. Did he force her to open her mouth and he put the gun in? Was he pressing the gun against her lip and she opened her mouth to scream and the gun fell in? Was she talking and he leans over and the gun ends up inside her mouth? It doesn't matter. It's not like he was pointing the gun at her foot. He was pointing the gun at the most vital organ on the human body, the brain, the face, the head. If that gun goes off for any reason, it's second-degree murder. I told you I was going to beat that horse to death. I want to make sure that we're all very clear about this. And then, of course, there is what's called a gun use enhancement, and this is the easiest thing we'll talk about all day. If you decide that he's guilty
How in the world was this a hung jury? I don't get it.
of second-degree murder, which the evidence clearly shows, then unlike the bowling ball incident where there was no gun involved, here in California, if there is a gun use during the crime in any way, if the gun was personally used by the defendant, then there will be a question that you'll get on a verdict form from the judge, and it'll say, do you find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder? Yes. And was there a gun involved, or true or not true? You would mark true, because obviously the Colt Cobra is in fact a gun. I talked to you at length during the voir dire process. You'll recall, take a look at what kind of water I'm drinking, by the way. I can use all the help I can get. Smart water. I don't know if it's going to help or not. See, it didn't help. I forgot what I was talking about. Direct and circumstantial evidence. We talked about direct and circumstantial evidence a little bit in the voir dire process, and I remember it's my habit and custom to get a promise from all of you. So if you're in this box, I talked to you about it, or Mr. Dixon talked to you about it, we got a promise from you as far as direct and circumstantial evidence. Those old movies drive me nuts. Those old James Cagney movies where the guy walks out, it's black and white, he's wearing a fedora, and he walks out to a cop, and the cop is some flatfoot, and the guy goes in some, New York brogue. I can't do it as well as Mr. Cutler could. And he'll make fun of me for this, but he says something like, you got nothing on me, cop, it's all circumstantial, right? And I quiver. I think to myself, God, we're sending a horrible message to actual jurors out there. It sounds like there's something wrong with circumstantial evidence, right? I mean, you got nothing on me, it's all circumstantial. That is an incorrect statement of the law. Absolutely 100% incorrect. Direct evidence and circumstantial evidence are entitled to the exact same weight in a court of law. And I'll give you an example. We talked about it a little bit in the voir dire process. Let me remind you, because it's a cute example, quite frankly, and it'll bring everybody kind of back to where we started from back at the beginning. Nobody? Yeah? Okay. All right. Here we go again. The little boy is standing at the back porch, has fallen overnight, and there's a gorgeous blanket of snow, untouched, virgin snow, if you will. And there's a barn about 100 feet away from the back door. And that little boy looks up and says, Mommy, Daddy, whatever, I'd like to go over to the barn. I say, okay, fine. He puts on his galoshes, and he walks over to the barn. And you watch as he makes little tracks in the snow, right? Then the question before the court is, who put the tracks in the snow? And obviously there would be direct evidence, because we'd call Mommy or Daddy or whoever was standing there, and they'd say, I saw him put the tracks in the snow. Okay, so that's one way to find out who put the tracks in the snow, and that's direct evidence. Now change the scenario a little bit, and the little boy says, I want to walk out to the barn. Say, okay, that's fine. You turn around, you turn your back, and pour a cup of coffee. All right, by the time you get back to the back door, you see little Bobby standing across at the barn. He turns around, and he's stomping his feet, and he turns around to you, and he waves. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Whatever. And you look down, and there's tracks heading from your step to our door, and that's where his feet are. Now the question before the court: who laid the tracks in the snow? Anybody in this great body problem with that evidence saying, of course, little Bobby laid the tracks in the snow. Well, that's circumstantial evidence. There's not a shred of direct evidence as to who put those tracks in the snow. Not a shred. It's completely circumstantial. But as you can see from that very obvious example, circumstantial evidence is just going to tell you, Judge Fiddler, you don't have to take my word for it. Judge Fiddler is actually going to tell you direct evidence, circumstantial evidence, you give it the same weight. So if there are deductions you can make from circumstantial evidence, then you make those deductions and you're comfortable with them. And there's no need to discuss, well, I think that's only circumstantial. Oh, no. The answer is absolutely it's circumstantial. That's great. Thumbs up. Circumstantial evidence is just as powerful as direct evidence. And that is the law you swore to follow. Here's where we're going to, and that's my discussion of the law. See, that wasn't so bad, was it? Wasn't like pulling teeth. Now I want to remind you of the facts leading up to
What the heck? He's the same age as Travis. No way. No way. Oh my God. No way.
what happened at 5 o'clock in the morning. You all remember them. You all know them. As a matter of fact, you've all been taking copious notes, some more copious than others. I think there may be a record set, sir. In any event, if I'm anything wrong, Judge, I guarantee I will be corrected. I want to remind you, it's been a long time. We've gone through about 4 months of evidence and 70-odd witnesses. I just want to come back to where we started from and talk about how the trial began and what led up to the events, ultimately, that took Lana Clarkson's life. The events, ultimately, that led Phil Spector to point that gun at her. And when the gun goes off, it takes her life. So let's talk about that. What happened 2003, actually February 2nd, I should have indicated it was the day before. You all know it was the day before, in the evening hours. This will just remind you of all the locations. That's the Alhambra Castle at this point. When I first introduced this stuff to you, it was probably a little bit vague. Now that you've sat through the facts, you know this stuff as well as I did. We start off at the grill, move over to Trader Vic's, go to Dan Tana's, and recall when we end up at the House Blues and moving on. As Philip Spector moved through Los Angeles, moved from the grill and Trader Vic's and Dan Tana's over to the House of Blues, and that pattern included starting off with certain witnesses, starting off with dates. And at each point, if you recall, at each point, Phil Spector began to drink. At the beginning, important that he drinks. So you're out, big deal. That's how it starts. Phil Spector begins to emerge. You'll recall that, just to bring us back up to speed on what he was drinking that night, you'll recall, according to the evidence, that he had at least 2 drinks at the grill, starting off with Ronnie Davis. You'll recall once he moved over to Trader Vic's, he had 2 more drinks, but those drinks were special. We even got the recipe for those drinks during the course of this trial. 6 shots of rum in those 2 drinks. He moved over to Dan Tana's. We heard from an employee at Dan Tana's talking about the fact that he had 2 drinks, probably daiquiri. Remember, he described them as, he thought they were gold in color, looked like daiquiris, but he wasn't served them, wasn't sure. Clearly, he had $33 worth of a bar bill. It's consistent with a couple of daiquiris. Kathy Sullivan then came in and said, yeah, in fact, I remember that he had 2 cocktails there. And then, of course, the Bacardi 151 that he was drinking at the House of Blues. He shot that and wanted another. But Sophia Holguin refused to give him another because it was at that point.
Stupid court TV.
About Spector's behavior. What did this alcohol begin to do to Spector? How did he begin to react and act as he continued continued to consume alcohol throughout the evening. They've been dating Phil Spector. They had met their high school reunion the year before. It was the certain time the year before, 2002. They continued to date throughout 2002, and now we're into 2003. And they were social daters. It was a platonic relationship, but they were good friends. They were social daters. And she said something interesting. Up until this weekend, she had not seen him drinking before. Up until this weekend, he hadn't consumed alcohol, at least in her presence. As he began to drink there at the grill, she said that Mr. Spector was not his usual self. Phil wasn't his usual self. What does that mean? Actually, maybe she didn't know the usual Phil. Maybe she didn't know the real Phil Spector. Maybe she had just seen the person that was putting on airs while he was dating this beautiful, elegant woman. But tonight was different. Starting at about 7 o'clock at dinner, she began to drink at least 2 drinks in her presence. And her comment was she wasn't his usual self and that he was beginning to act totally different. Keep in mind, at this point, it's starting. At this point, it's starting. We're starting to see the real Phil Spector emerge. What did Kathy Sullivan tell you about his conduct? Remember what she said. She joined him at the grill. She wasn't drinking with him at the grill. She was working there, recall? She joined him at the grill, and then they moved off to Dan Tana's. That's when he really started to shift into second and start drinking heavily. He drank those 2 Navy grogs, 6 shots of alcohol. Then he moved on to Dan Tana's with her. And remember what she said about his mood. Even at Dan Tana's, he started to get snippy and angry and loud. He looked at those, he sort of mad dogged, I'm using a colloquial phrase, but he sort of mad dogged those patrons out on the sidewalk at Dan Tana's. And she said that his behavior began to want the House of Blues. He tapped at her. Remember what she said. Once they got to the House of Blues, she said, I've had a long night. She said, I don't feel pretty. I'm in my uniform. I don't feel like partying. It's, in the morning, 2 o'clock, 1:45, something like that. And no, I don't want to drink. I just want water. So Sophia Holguin walks up and says, folks, may I take your order? And what does she say? I'll have water. Have a drink. And she begins to see his mood change. The real Phil Spector is beginning to emerge. No, Phil, I just want water. I'm tired. I just want water. Just sit down and have a fucking drink, was his comment. His comment was rude enough and out of character and out of sorts enough that it actually made Sophia Holguin uncomfortable. Kathy Sullivan said after he barked at her, it sort of embarrassed her. And she wasn't into it. She just wanted to go home. But she refused to have the drink. Phil Spector wanted control. The real Phil Spector was beginning to emerge. He's out on a date. Think about it. He's out on a date. Not even a date, a platonic friendship with Kathy Sullivan. But he wanted to drink. I'm Phil Spector, and I want to drink, and I want you to drink with me. Well, no, thanks, but I just want water. Just sit down and have a fucking drink. That's the real Phil Spector. That's the control he exerts on others. The person who will not go. When it's not working with Kathy Sullivan and she decides she wants to leave, Phil Spector starts hitting on Sophia Holguin. Well, you want to have a drink with me? No, sir. Well, I'll tell you what. Get off. You want to come back to the house with me? You want to have a drink back at the castle? I'll show you my castle. And Sophia Holguin says what? She says, you know what?
If anybody said to me, I'll show you my castle, I would run the other way.
Phil Spector was on the move. He was on the prowl. Phil Spector wanted what he wanted, and he wanted it right then. After Bacardi 151 he wanted to continue to drink more. This was the mood that Spector was in. This was the frame of mind that he was in. And this is how it starts. every time he's confronted with this situation, this is how it starts. This is his motivator. This is how he's motivated. And even Sophia Holguin, as I said, noticed that he was loud and boisterous. And the word she used, angry. Adriana D'Souza gave you some insight. He spent more consistent time with Phil Spector than anybody else through the evening because he began the driving and he ended the driving. What did he tell you about how Philip Spector was acting at the House of Blues? He said that once they, Philip Spector and Lana Clarkson, emerged from the House of Blues, Spector continued to insist that Lana Clarkson join him, continued to insist that she join him back at the castle. But she kept saying no. She kept resisting. He continued to insist more. Well, I'll tell you what, then let me take you back to where? Well, you know what? I'll just get you in the car. Let me take you to your car. I'll take you to your parking lot. No, Mr. Spector, no, I appreciate it. I've got to work tomorrow. My car's in the parking lot. No, it's late. I've had a long day. Full for an answer. He wouldn't take no for an answer. Come on back to the castle. Come back to my castle. I've got a castle in Alhambra. I want to show you my castle. Let's go back for a drink. Finally, she says, you know what? No, I don't want to go back to the castle, but I'll take you a ride to the car. Once back at the car, once back at the parking garage, then, and only then, does she relent and say, okay, you know what? All right, one drink. He continued to insist, and she said, okay, I'll go back for a drink. Now, why would Lana Clarkson agree to go back to Phil Spector's house at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2:20 in the morning, something like that? A man that she barely knew. Think about what Euphrates Lalandra has told you about Phil Spector. She didn't even know who Phil Spector was. As a matter of fact, she thought he was a woman. He had kind of wild, crazy hair. He was wearing a woman's jacket. It was oversized. He was diminutive in size. Hello, Mrs. Spector. Remember that? Kind of a little bit of levity. And Euphrates Lalandra has immediately corrected her. No, that's Phil Spector. Okay, fine. Who's Phil Spector? Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Don't worry about who Phil Spector is, but you treat him like owns the place. You treat him like gold, was the comment to Lana Clarkson. So now Lana is standing in a parking lot with a guy that she has just been told, and she hadn't had the job all that long, 4 or 6 weeks, something like that, at the House of Blues? And she's taken the job for one reason, because she thinks, at least for one of the reasons, at least because she thinks there might be some good connections here. Remember the conversation she had with Nick Terzian? And she said, Mr. Terzian, and Mr. Terzian related to us, oh, it's at the House of Blues. Well, what, are you going to be like bartending? Or what? Oh, no, they want me at security. They want me to be the VIP room hostess. And Terzian said, at the foundation room? He said, yeah, take it. Are you crazy? It's exactly what you want, exactly what you need. That work, of course. Take it. So now she's confronted, standing out in a parking lot with
I swear, it's like StreamYard knows when I'm doing something else. It's like, she's not paying attention. I'm going to crash now. I was trying to set up the portal to go to the Wackadoodle trial.
maybe. This is one of those connections I should probably make. I should probably keep this guy happy. I don't want to piss him off. I'll go back and I'll have a drink. It'll be fine. No big deal. That's her motivation. And finally, as you get to the castle, she accepts the ride. Adriana back to the castle, and he drops both front steps. There's, 84 of them or 88 of them, something like that, going up to the front of the house. And what does Phil Spector notice? What does Adriana D'Souza notice about Phil Spector's demeanor at that point? Remember, he said he smelled the odor of alcohol. Well, it wasn't Lana. Lana hadn't been drinking. Lana just got off work. He smelled the odor of alcohol. His speech was a little bit slurred. And as he moved his way up the front steps to the castle, his gait was a little bit unsteady. So we know the facts are very clear. I don't think anybody has any question about Phil Spector's state of inebriation. Was he so blitzed out of his mind he couldn't walk or talk? No, of course not. We're not suggesting that. But there is significant evidence that he was under the influence, that he had been drinking. He was feeling no pain, as they say. So they end up inside the house. Adriana D'Souza takes the car up the back way. You guys went up the back way. You know how that there's two routes, and he goes up to the motor court and parks this Mercedes right about there. He sits in the Mercedes. It's about an hour and a half, he said. He said they got back to the castle somewhere after they dropped Lana Clarkson's car off. And remember, that's an important point. She didn't just leave her car in the parking garage. She insisted that they move her car. Why would she want to move her car to the street? If the parking garage closes at, say, 3 o'clock in the morning, why move your car? If you're planning on going over to Phil Spector's house and drinking and partying and playing all night and spending the night there, just leave your car in the parking garage. It's safe there. Pick it up the next morning when it opens back up at 8 o'clock or whatever time it opens. No. Gives you rich and that insight is, I want my car. I'm going to go back to the castle for a drink or two, but I'm leaving. Ultimately, I'm leaving when I want to leave, and I'm going to make sure I have my car available when I do it. So they get back to the location. Adriana D'Souza, after dropping the car off and doing the switcheroo and all that kind of stuff, they end up back at the location around 3:30. Said about an hour and a half passed or so. And as he's sitting in the car, in the Mercedes, the door is closed, and he hears pop. What was that? He gets out of the car, and he walks. Your Honor, briefly, he gets out of the...
Phil's like, I'm not going to look at this guy. I'm just not going to look at him. I'm going to sit here and be a little angel and pretend like this is all lies.
Car, and he walks around the front of the car. Walks around the fountain and back. Now, to you, that took, I asked him on direct examination, folks, you guys were out at the location. You saw how far that fountain is at a gingerly pace, at a relaxed pace. You could probably make it around in 20 seconds, 25 seconds back to the car. He estimated about a minute, but you were actually out there. Let your view of the evidence be your guide as to how long it took. What was it, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, something like that. And he ends up back in the car. He doesn't see any broken branches. He looked at the front of the car. There was nothing that fell on it. He didn't know what he heard at that time. It came out of... This is a military man. This officer in the Brazilian military for 9 years. But that was so out of place, he didn't place it. He gets back in the car. No sooner had he shut the door. He said about another minute passed or so once he got back in the car. So we're talking about literally seconds. Was it over a minute? Was it 60 seconds, 80 seconds, something like that? I don't know. Literally, we're talking about seconds before the back door opened and Philip Spector emerged. And what did Adriano D'Souza tell you? He said Phil Spector, seconds after the gunshot, literally had the smoking gun in his hand, in his right hand, across his waist. He literally had Lana Clarkson's blood on his hand. He looked Adriano D'Souza right in the face. They were standing 4 to 6 feet apart. You've actually seen where that location is. You've seen how far it is. You've seen what you can see. You've heard what you can hear. And Phil Spector looks at him and says, I think I killed somebody. He told Adriano D'Souza what he had just heard. He unequivocally told Adriano D'Souza before he had time to think about it, before he had time to come up with something, he told Adriano D'Souza exactly what happened with that pop inside the house. And what were his words? I think I killed somebody. What did Adriano D'Souza do? What was his initial reaction? He grabbed his cell phone and he hit the first speed dial on the cell phone. What was the second thing he did? Everybody knows. He didn't know what anybody would do. What anybody would do in an emergency.
What are you reporting?
Hi, it's my name is Adriano. I'm Phil Spector driver. I think my boss killed somebody. Please, can you send me
You think your boss killed somebody?
Yes,
Okay, where are you at?
It's 1700 Grandview Drive, please.
1700 Grandview?
Yes.
And why do you believe he may have killed somebody?
Because you have a lady on the floor, and he has a gun in his hand.
Okay, stay on the line. Do not hang up. You're in Glendale?
No, I'm on the Alhambra. It's 1700 Grandview Drive.
Or anything?
Yeah, I hit a twice, and then he opened the door, and I think I killed her.
Court TV. Come on. Stop. Please stop. Please stop. Please stop.
I killed her, and then I'm outside the castle.
Okay, stay on the line. Do not hang up.
What's happening at this juncture is the CHP 911 call
Good Lord.
off of cell phones. They then transfer the call to the appropriate agency. The call was transferred to Alhambra, and the call.
Alhambra CHP. We got a transfer from an address of 1700 Grandview Drive, reporting that he thinks his boss just shot and killed the woman.
Okay, and then?
He heard the shot and he said there's a woman lying on the floor and his boss told him he thinks he killed her.
Okay, and it's inside the house?
It's inside of business.
Business?
Yeah. I'll bring him online. He's calling from cell phone 310-488-5548.
Okay, hello?
He's on.
Sir?
Yeah.
Okay, what happened?
Oh my God, again.
Oh, okay, your boss shot someone?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you heard a shot?
Yeah, I heard the shot outside. Then I am outside the castle because I don't know what.
Is this a residence?
No, it's a residence.
Okay. Your boss boss?
Yeah. He had a gun in his hand.
Oh, and where's the man now?
Yeah, come here.
Sir, where's the man? The man with the gun, where is he?
Oh, inside the castle because I'm outside. I'm afraid to go inside again.
But you saw him with the gun?
Yeah, I saw him with the gun.
Who did it shoot?
I don't know the lady.
Okay, so stay on the line, okay?
Okay.
This is someone.
Fast.
Okay, hold on, okay? Sir, East?
Yeah.
You said that's your boss. Okay, what's he
I'm driver.
Oh, you're his driver?
Yeah, I'm his driver.
What do you drive? In a taxi or what?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, what are you driving?
I'm driving my...
Who's driving you too?
Oh my God.
Looking up to the street, follow at a speed.
Okay.
Okay, so...
Possible transpire
You're
committed
transport
of Grandview
service?
Drive with the Castle.
No, I'm a private driver.
He heard one shot
Adriano.
and he stated he saw his boss
Okay,
holding
and
his
the boss's name?
possibly shot at
Yes,
one
sir.
shot.
Yeah.
That's his name?
Yes.
S-E-A-L?
C-H-I-L. Spector.
C-H-I-L.
I-L.
C-H-I-L.
Spector.
Come on, Court TV. What is your deal?
Oh, Phil.
Phil, yeah.
Phil Spector? Okay.
Yeah. Sorry?
You see or hear anything else?
Sorry.
I don't want you to, okay? And what's your name?
Oh, I saw the car. Yeah, the police car is coming.
Okay, sir. Well, what's your name?
Adriano.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry you gave me that. And your last name?
Souza, S-O-U-Z-A.
Okay, and your phone number is 310-488-5548?
Yes.
Okay, have the units made contact with you?
Oh,
You think you saw the policeman?
no, it's coming now.
Okay. So on, Teresa.
Here, one. I need the last call was the broken refrigerator.
Hang up the phone now.
Okay, hold on. What color is your Mercedes?
It's black.
Make sure that the officer made contact with you first before I
Okay.
okay?
Inside the castle, sir. Inside up.
Okay, so go and talk to him, okay?
At the time that Adriano D'Souza was speaking with the 911 operators, both of them, the CHP operator and the Alhambra operator, and by the way, the reason that she asks questions over and over and over is they are trained to main question was John. All right, fine. Have you made contact with the police? No. And I'm sorry, sir, your name was what? John. They are trained to make sure that the person on the other line stays on the other end of the line, stays on. So it may sound kind of odd. Another thing to take note of, who was interpreting who, or whom, I should say, on that during that call? Adriano D'Souza had no problem understanding anything either of the 911 operators were saying. None. They might have had a little bit of a problem understanding because he was on a cell phone and it wasn't the clearest connection. But he had no problem understanding their English. He had no problem interpreting what they were saying or hearing what they were saying. What he had no way of knowing at that time is exactly what had happened to Lana Clarkson. He indicated during the course of his testimony on the witness stand that he had looked around Mr. Spector. He asked, "What happened, sir?" Remember, the way it happened was Phil Spector said, "I think I killed somebody." And Philip Spector's answer was a shrug with, as just said, a stupid face. A shrug and a stupid face. Adriana D'Souza looked past him and saw Lana Clarkson with blood on her face. But that's all he knew. There's a woman with blood on her face. He had no idea that the Spector to the shot through. D'Souza got to see Phil Spector photographs. He never saw her up close. By the time he was informed by Phil, it was too late. Lana Clarkson was the difference in reaction. Adriana D'Souza, sitting outside in a Mercedes, hears a pop. Mr. Spector says, immediately from the back door where Spector was holding that gun. And what does he immediately? He calls Michelle. You can panic. You can really, it's palpable. You can hear the panic in his throat. Bill killed a lady. And then he immediately calls the police. He immediately contacts the police. What was Phil Spector doing during this same time? Think about some of the things that he was doing. Just put that in the back of your mind as we talk about this. Where did his jacket end up? What about that diaper? What about her face? What was Phil Spector doing while Adriana D'Souza was calling for help to help this woman? What was Spector doing?
Tampering with evidence.
In any case, any criminal case, the hallmark of a criminal case is that it can be one-sided insofar as the evidence is concerned. What do I mean by that? I mean the defense, all these folks on this side of the table have no burden whatsoever. They don't have to present a defense. If they wish not to. If they so choose, they don't have to say a word. If they so choose, they have a burden. They have the entire burden rests with the prosecution. I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. And we accept that responsibility. Mr. Dixon, myself, on behalf of the office, on behalf of the people of the state of California, we embrace that responsibility. That's how our system of justice works, and it is without. They can sit there like a bump on a log. They don't have to cross-examine any witness. They don't have to present a witness. They don't have to make an argument. Like, they literally have nothing to do. If they don't want to. But, and you knew there was a but coming, didn't you? But, if they choose to make arguments, if they choose to call witnesses, they bear the same obligation, not a burden of proof. They bear the same responsibility and the same obligation to present evidence that is true truthful, to present evidence that is honest, to present evidence that is trustworthy. That's their obligation. Not truthful, that is not honest. If you can't trust the character and quality of the evidence that's presented by the defense, you have an obligation, a legal obligation, to ignore it. In this particular case, they did present a defense. And it can best be described as what I would call a checkbook defense. What do I mean? A checkbook defense. That means if you hire enough lawyers who hire enough experts who are paid enough money, pay someone enough money, you can get them to wear a tutu into court. If you hire enough, you can get them to say just about anything. And second, if you find a witness that is somehow indebted to you or indebted to someone close to you, either financially or otherwise, you can get them to say just about anything. Pumpkin pie. You can get them to say just about anything. Mr. Spector has spent a long time investing a $8 bar tab and a $470 tip, a $30 bar tab and a $500 tip. I think I did it, your memories, and this is what I'm about, your memories of the actual evidence, and the actual evidence is what controls. I'm trying to think. I think I added up at one time the number of tips that he left just on February 2nd and 3rd. 17 bucks. I may be wrong, but I think it was around 1,700 bucks. And probably spent 50 on services. You throw at a problem. Mr. Spector thinks he can solve the problem. That's what I mean by a checkbook defense. You heard from a lot of folks in this case. You heard from a lot of experts. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit of detail at least. But keep in mind, and this is a defining theme throughout my talk with you, as I talk about defense. And you know what? As I talk about the prosecution of, I want you to scrutinize both sides. I want you to scrutinize the evidence that myself and Mr. Dixon presented on behalf of the people of the state of California. Scrutinize.
StreamYard, would you please stop? Why are you freezing?
The hell out of it. That's what you're here for. I'll bet you won't hear the same thing from the defense. I bet they don't want you to look as closely at their evidence because it won't stand up to your scrutiny. You have to constantly ask yourself, and you will hear me say this over and over and over, and I apologize about the mantra. I need to know that you're thinking about this when you're thinking about the evidence. Can I trust this evidence? Can I trust what's being presented? If you have a witness who says A and another witness says B, there is not a case to say opposite things. That does not lead to a stalemate. Everybody understands that, right? You have to test the quality of the testimony that you're getting. You have to look at the quality and the character of the testimony that you're receiving. And that's what I want to talk about insofar as the defense is concerned. That's what I mean by a checkbook defense. You have to constantly ask yourself, was the presentation by the defense really trying to get the truth? Bookended by the flags stands for. We are here to seek the truth. Not just throw things at you and try to the evidence. We're here to see truth, and both sides should be engaged in that endeavor. But you have to decide if both sides really are or were. Was the evidence trustworthy? And I'm not going to go through in great detail the next points that I'm going to make, but I just want to put something in that mind. Just think about a couple of these things that were presented on behalf of the defense. Daniel Stark, good a place to start as any. What was that all about? If having a drink, I mean, we ended up litigating whether or not she was having a drink at a Christmas Eve party a year before. Anybody heard the phrase collateral issue? This couldn't be more collateral. This was a completely collateral issue, but I wasn't going to hang out there. Daniel Stark walks in uniform, short sleeves, open collar, waltzes in and says, "Oh yeah, I remember, I only had 13 months on off the top of my head. I looked at any notes, no reports, nothing. I've done thousands upon thousands of calls since then, but I remember this woman and she was drunk." Did anybody think to yourself,
I did.
there's actually an EMS report there? In it down, not under the. Then we find out that there's a base hospital form, and it's from death, not under the influence, no ETOH. And then we find out that there's a recording the actual call, and the influence. No, she's not the influence. Defense put you with wanted.
Okay, Carla, I'll see you later. StreamYard, I need 5 more minutes. We're almost done with the first part of the closings. Come on, StreamYard. Behave. Have a good day, Carla. Thanks for stopping in. 5 more minutes. Literally, that's all that's left in this part. And now it's going to buffer. Good Lord. Aggravating thing.
Presented you with none of that. They found the answer they wanted, and that's all you got. And if we hadn't stood up in cross-examination and started exploring a little bit about this, you wouldn't have gotten.
Dang it.
And what did we find out about who was attending her? This wasn't new to them, to the defense. Bruce Liverpool was known to the defense. He was contacted by the defense, and he didn't give them the answer they wanted, so they went to the other guy, Daniel Stark. Remember his phrase? I'll never forget this. When he's on the stand, he said, "Oh yeah, Tawny Tindall approached me under the influence," and remember what his phrase was? You may not recall this. stood out in my mind, and I wrote it down. He said, "You know what? I think I can help you." Not, "Oh, yes, I remember that occasion."
Dadgummit, I hate this website. Next trial we're going to do off of you.
Can you trust their presentation of the evidence? Or are they trying to manipulate? Tawny Tyndall. There's two things we know for sure about Tawny Tyndall. She didn't testify in this case, but we found out two things for sure. She doesn't record any of her conversations. Kind of a basic point for an investigator, wouldn't you think?
Well, dang it. And that was a horrible place for it to freeze. He's got his tongue stuck out. Okay. We'll finish that tomorrow. Well, it crashed before I could even end the stream, for crying out loud. Hey, Wiggles. Yeah, that wasn't his mouth, though. That was Linda Kenny Bodden that did that. Okay, guys. Now we get to go to the wackadoodle trial. Man, that was good yesterday. After all the boring science stuff was over, it got really, really good. I hope we get to hear from her brother today. Okay, so we're going to jump over there. This will redirect you guys. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to the other stream. You will automatically go to the other stream. Don't go anywhere. He did it too? Jackson did it too? I don't remember him doing it. Okay, I believe you though. Okay, I'll see you in a minute.